Welcome back, everyone, to the Boxing Podcast. Back with our co-host here, Chato. How you doing, Chato?
I'm doing good. I'm excited. Another podcast.
Yeah. So the last 2 weeks we got not as big names, not as big headliners, but we got a bunch of smaller fights. Especially last week, we had three main events. Two of them happening actually at the same time. But 2 weeks ago, we had the biggest fight since our last podcast, and that was Anthony Joshua's return to the heavyweight division, where he fought Jermaine Franklin. Before the fight, I had mentioned that I thought Jermaine Franklin might pick up even like seven rounds, and it might be like a close fight that Joshua controversially wins. I could have seen that happening because I think Jermaine Franklin's a really good fighter. But Joshua beat him clearly. A lot of people had him winning actually all 12 rounds. It's a good win. You know, Joshua kind of continues his pattern of not fighting any duds. He fights real names, real fights. But what'd you think of the fight, Shots?
Yeah, I saw the fight. I was impressed. I mean, I know a lot of people from what I've seen a little bit disappointed that Anthony Joshua doesn't get the stoppage here, but like you said, I mean, 10 rounds to 2 maybe, being even that, you could call that generous, but Joshua looked good. I thought he performed well. He was, like you said, never takes the easy fights, and you got to respect him for that. I thought he looked good, and I thought, hopefully a confidence booster for Joshua. That's what we really want to see, is Joshua get confident again and continue to step up and win big fights.
Yeah, and again, this was a good win, but obviously it wasn't enough for Joshua's largest critics. A lot of people still felt that he doesn't really show what he's shown against maybe the Klitschko fight or kind of the wars he was willing to get into and exchange and kind of really throw hands. After that fight, after his performance, Joshua boldly made a claim that he wanted not only to fight in the summer, but he also called out a name. He called out Tyson Fury. Angelo, we now know that Joshua is not fighting in the summer. It sounds like he'll be back in December. What do you think his next fight is? And also, what do you think, kind of on top of that, what do you think of a fight between Joshua and Fury right now?
When he said, I'll be back in the summer, and then he took to social media after and said, I'll be back in 12 weeks. I was surprised. Didn't expect it. Don't expect it. Obviously, now it's not happening. I mean, does he deserve the Fury fight? Probably not. But it sounds like, again, Fury, Usyk, probably, from what it sounds like, is going to be made. Throw him the fight, man. That's two British boxers who are going to sell out Wembley, who are going to make a bunch of money. And who knows, maybe Joshua comes with something that we don't expect and figures something out from now until then. But, I mean, if Fury's got nothing else, give him that fight.
So let me ask you this as kind of more of a little bit of a casual side of things. Are there any fights that excite you as much as Joshua Fury in the heavyweight division, for Joshua specifically? So is there any opponent that could get you interested in Joshua right now?
Joshua Wilder, I think, is fun. I mean, let's be honest here. Wilder wins, in my opinion. I think that most people would see a Wilder win there. But it's fun. It's two guys who had a few losses that they weren't proud of. A few guys. I mean, Wilder's coming off a insanely crazy knockout. If he lands on Joshua, probably knocks him out. I mean, but that's the fight. But again, if he can hold out and get the Fury fight, it's a fun fight still. It's two huge British boxers who are going to sell out Wembley. Like I said, the atmosphere will be crazy. They'll play Sweet Caroline before the fight. As a Red Sox fan, I love that. But if he can hold out and get the Fury fight and he believes it, get the Fury fight, man. It's going to make you so much money.
Yeah, the only other thing I could think of is Joshua's kind of at this point in his career where I think there's no reason for him to go backwards and take little gimme fights, He's never backed down from a big fight before, and I think why not take 2 or 3 giant fights, get massive paydays again, maybe one of them in Saudi Arabia and one of them in the UK or something, whatever Joshua's got to do. I just don't think he should go backwards. I think he should take the big names, and just on top of that, I think there's a lot of interest still in a Wilder fight, either in the UK, either here or in Saudi Arabia. Fury, I think, has to happen either in the UK or Saudi Arabia. I don't think he'll get up without that kind of money. And then the only other thing I could think of was you could do Joshua Joe Joyce in the UK, assuming Joe Joyce comes out victorious. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I did want to get your take on. You obviously have heard the name Joe Joyce. You know a little bit about Joe Joyce, but as someone who's more akin to the American side of boxing, does a Joshua Joe Joyce interest you at all, or is that something that's kind of beneath Joshua? You feel?
Not beneath him. It's interesting, for sure. Again, it's just the problem is here, right? When you get, especially like you said, me, more of a casual guy. You hear the name Wilder or Fury, and it just excites you. It excites you, and then you hear Joe Joyce, and you're like, well, I watch a little bit more than I would say the casual fan. Maybe not up to like the extreme fan, but sure, it's a fun fight. But again, when you hear Fury and Wilder in the same conversation as Joshua, those are just fun. They're fun.
Right, they're huge fights, and I think the heavyweight division was so close to getting that undisputed fight. It needs something huge to happen again like that. And I do think that Wilder, Fury, and Joshua are the names that can make it happen. Don't get me wrong, I have all the respect in the world for Usyk. Great fighter, probably better than most of these guys if you're going pound for pound. But in the heavyweight division, there's nothing like seeing someone like Deontay Wilder who can destroy other heavyweights, but also seeing someone awkward but charismatic like Fury, and then there's someone who like Joshua, who's just a great guy, just oozes charisma as well. Anyway, moving on the undercard of this event, we saw Eddie Hearn come out with Laura and Wood to announce their rematch, which will be taking place on May 27th in Manchester. What do you think of this rematch, Shuts?
I absolutely love it. I watched the fight when it happened. I mean, the first maybe 2 or 3 rounds, just a close fight, a fun fight, a war from the start. I mean, and you get, a Mexican fighter in there. He's never going to back down from a war. Then Wood just kind of started to just pick up the rounds and figure things out. He started to really, I don't know if he started to hurt Lara, but he was starting to get there. And then, Lara just lands a beautifully executed shot, drops Wood, ends up stopping the fight. I would have liked to seen it go back to Mexico, but I think that in Manchester, I think they both get more money out of it. I think that's where the money was at. But it's
UK
fun.
fans are going to show up.
Oh yeah, the UK fans will show up. The UK fans are we've heard it from YouTubers. They're just awesome. They're awesome. So they'll show up. It's fun. It's another fight that like I would tell someone who's maybe a little bit more casual than I am, tune into it, right? 2 names that you don't necessarily hear as much, but 2 guys who are ready to just go at it.
Yeah, and included on DAZN, not a pay-per-view fight. Definitely something that is easy to recommend to people that are just trying to get into boxing. Really fun fight for the WBA featherweight title. The winner of this fight will likely face Warrington. First of all, early thoughts on this fight. How do you see it going?
I see Lara executing again. I don't see him dropping those, middle rounds to Wood this time, and I see him stopping it again, landing the big shot. I don't think Wood really hurt Lara much, if at all, in that fight. So I think Lara knows with better execution, he can come in, and now he knows not only can I hurt him, I can stop him.
Yeah, and I think Lara will come in with a little bit more confidence, like you said, a little more willingness to trade. And that pressure just might be too much for Wood this time around. Going off of that, let's take both of them for example. Let's not discriminate on the podcast. So let's start out with Wood. Let's say Wood somehow pulls off the win against our prediction. Maybe comes out with a decision or something, and we go the distance. Wood Warrington is a massive fight in the UK. I think it kind of sells itself there. How do you think it does, though, just in terms of general audience? Do you think that fight would be a big enough name to draw? I mean, I think Warrington himself is already a big enough name to draw attention from even casual fans. But do you think Wood Warrington is something that could kind of be sold to a general audience?
Yeah, I think so, especially because if people didn't tune into the first Lara versus Wood match, they need to tune in to the second one because Wood is a champion. That man's a warrior. So if you didn't tune in at first, tune in this time. He's not going to give you a boring fight. He's going to come out there, like you said. No bias here. Wood's going to go try and take that title. And if he does, it won't shock me. I won't be shocked. Like, it won't be a huge upset in my opinion. And like you said, him against Warrington in the UK, it'll sell itself. It'll do great. And yeah, I mean, the general audience, tune in because, again, not a boring fight. Those fights will be so much fun.
Awesome. And then your thoughts on Laura Warrington. How do you see that doing if that ends up coming to after this fight?
Again, I think like you said, Warrington's got the pool. It probably takes place in the UK, I think. And it makes sense. Like I said, that's probably where they get the most money. Probably not in Mexico. Definitely not in the United States.
Definitely a fight, I think, though, Mexican fans will come out for.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. Because I think that the British fans will show out and the Mexican fans will show out. The Mexican fans are crazy. They love their boxing. If there's something that they love most, it's their boxing. Maybe drinking as well, but they're boxing. So that fight's going to do great too. I like Lara on that fight. I think he could arguably be the best division right now. But again, I mean, he's got to get past Wood, and that's no easy task at all.
Absolutely. And just to put a pin on this, do you think Laura's kind of unsportsmanlike conduct post-fight will affect maybe his maybe anyone rooting for him going into this fight, or do you think that's kind of going to be overlooked just by the magnitude of how good the event will probably end up being?
No, is interesting, right? At first I didn't even know what he did. I was just kind of sitting there, but like wondering who's this, like why is he? But then I heard later what he did. I think he's gonna get hate. It is weird. Even myself, as a lot of fan, I'm like, what are you doing there? You won.
Absolutely.
Hang out with your team. You celebrate with your team in the ring. Get out of there. But he's gonna get hated on a little bit. Maybe deserving so. I don't know. But I think that's good for the fight too. I know that's not who he's fighting, but you make a scene like that, people then are like, well, that Lara guy, let's go watch him lose. So I think it could also be good for views.
Yeah, especially if he's gonna follow up this fight. If he assumes he's gonna win this fight, follow it up with a Warrington fight. Kind of, to use a pro wrestling term, heel it up in the ring, get those UK fans really upset with you. I think you could sell numbers, man, just being the bad guy going into that. How Mayweather did it with a lot of his fights. I think Jake Paul could be successful, and I think that's a good transition into big headline. And I'll let you deliver the news, Chats. You're our influencer guy, so
yeah. Jake Paul yesterday, right, announces he's fighting Nate Diaz, a fight that he said originally before the Tommy Fury fight was next, once he quote-unquote beat Tommy Fury. I'm not sure. He said it was Nate Diaz in the ring and then in the octagon with his PFL deal. I don't know anything about possible octagon fight after that, but yeah, he's fighting Nate Diaz, a great fight. Nate Diaz said he's got to be everyone's hero because he beat McGregor and now he's got to beat Jake Paul.
All right, and how do you see this fight compared to? I know your thoughts originally were a KSI fight. How big do you think this is comparatively to a KSI fight?
I think it's huge. I think it's fun. I think the MMA world thinks that Nate Diaz is going to win, which is fun. He could. And then, kind of like you said, maybe Jake Paul, this is the pick-me-up that he thinks he needs. It's a big fight. It's a fight that if he wins, he's going to be confident again. Like you said, he needs. And then maybe he'll go for that KSI fight. Or, of course, the Tommy Fury rematch. I see it in Jake Paul's favor. However, Nate Diaz is not going down. Okay? Nate Diaz has, correct me if I'm wrong out there, never been dropped in the MMA, in the octagon. He's never been dropped, and he's taken some shots. He'll probably end up slapping Jake Paul at some point in this fight because we know he likes to do that. And I just see Jake Paul winning rounds. I don't know all the logistics of the fight. I don't know how many rounds. I think he'll win most of them. That's how he'll win the fight. But, hey, man, Nate Diaz, maybe he'll land something big.
Yeah, and I'm honestly surprised. Jake Paul did kind of destroy Anderson Silva in the ring. So I have no confidence in any MMA fighter beating Jake Paul. Jake Paul's also really big. He can be a big boy. So I kind of agree with you. I think Jake Paul will pick up rounds if anything. He might even get the KO. I'm not that I'm not that confident in my ability to judge Nate Diaz's chin.
I'll just tell you right now, insane. That guy. I really don't think he's going down.
All right. What I wanted to ask you though is, what do you think this also means? I mean, a lot of people thought Jake Paul would try his best to get that KSI fight next after losing to Tommy Fury, maybe just to get his confidence back up or whatever. What do you think this means for KSI's future? You think he'll take a boxing match with this guy coming up, or do you think he's going to follow it up with Jake Paul, or do you think he's going to continue with the WWE?
I don't know. WWE seems a stretch for me. The prime bottle thing. Maybe though that could have gotten him in there. According to KSI, sorry, as someone who, yes, I'll admit it, shamefully watches a lot of his videos. Okay, he said on the Ariel Helwani show, the MMA Hour, he said, "I'm going to fight Jake Paul, beat Jake Paul, and if Tommy Fury beats Jake Paul," this is before the Tommy Fury fight, "I have to beat Tommy Fury then, and that'll be my end goal. That's my accomplishment." So also according to KSI, he hasn't been on his social media recently. It's not ran by him anymore after some recent things that he said. But Jake Paul turned down 3 contracts. I don't know if that could not be true, but Jake Paul is pretty quick to jump on him when something that KSI says is not true. So if that's true, that's a question for Jake Paul, right? Why did you turn those down? Are you scared? What is that? But all in all, I think at the end of the day, we get Jake Paul versus KSI. I don't think it's too big, and I don't think it's a fight that either one of them are going to shy away from, and I think it's next. I think Jake Paul beats Nate Diaz, doesn't fight him in the octagon. KSI probably beats Joe Fournier, and then I think it's next.
All right, and my last question to kind of wrap up the influencer stuff is, it's inevitable that one of these guys is going to get in the ring with a boxer again, whether that be KSI fighting Tommy Fury, or Jake Paul rematching Tommy Fury, or another boxer completely, like, I keep throwing the name Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who lost to Anderson Silva. I think that would be an easy transition for one of these guys to fight. How long do you think until we see an influencer fight a boxer again, and who do you think is going to be the next one?
I think it's between, because I guess KSI, that means we're not counting Joe Fournier, right? So it's going to either be Jake Paul or it's going to be Salt Poppy. One of them are going to jump in the ring with a boxer. I think Jake Paul makes sense for Tommy Fury. KSI is not going to do it because Jake Paul is too big for him. That's too big of a fight for him that he needs the money from. He's not going to be the one to do it. I think it's Jake Paul, maybe Salt Poppy, but we'll see. I mean, maybe KSI will get a huge win and get overconfident and go step in with a boxer.
Awesome. All right, and now to recap a more recent show. This just happened last week. First off, we'll start with Showtime PBC's main event, where we saw Sebastian Fundora, who has been hyped up a lot. I don't know, could you tell us what you knew about Fundora going into this? I don't know if you knew much or even heard the name, really.
Not much, no. I mean, a fight that I was kind of, not aware of, honestly, until Saturday, because I was looking so much forward to the Shakur Stevenson fight. So. Well,
to be honest, they also didn't advertise this fight very well, which is crazy because there was a lot of competition, a lot bigger names than Fundora. But Fundora's been getting a lot of attention on PBC. A lot of guys hyping him up. He fights at 154, which is the same weight class as Charlo and those guys, light middleweight. And Fundora, for a guy who can't really get a title shot, because like I mentioned previously, Charlo has all 4 belts and he's tied up with an injury in the Tim Tszyu fight. Fundora's gotten a decent amount of attention. He's also 6'6", which is incredibly tall for that division. But I feel like he's never been able to really capitalize on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
On how much bigger and lankier he is than the other fighters. Anyway, he was kind of favorited to pretty much take care of business for Showtime and get another highlight win. Kind of set him up for maybe a big name like Charlo and Zoo. But Brian Mendoza, man, comes into this fight swinging. Really just scores a brutal 7th round KO of Fundora and pulls up the big upset of the weekend. I know you have gone back though and rewatched the KO, right?
Yep.
What do you think of Mendoza's performance, and does it kind of make you question Showtime's hype around these fighters?
No, I not question. It's hard, right? It's hard to really get it right sometimes for a fighter. Instead, I would kind of reverse that, and this Brian Mendoza, maybe it's time, pay attention to him. I mean, the power's there, obviously. It was beautiful to watch. I don't know, again, I said, I don't know much about the two, but the knockout was beautiful. It's fun. It's always fun to see a knockout, right? You get fans with a knockout. When you knock someone out, fans,
Absolutely.
yeah, they gravitate towards you because you're that guy who, he knocked out him, So I don't know. Maybe that's, Mendoza's got a chance now to do something big. I don't know. You can kind of educate me and maybe take the lead on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Mendoza, like I said, everything with the titles are kind of tied up. So I think his best chance is to maybe rematch Fundora and show that this wasn't lightning in the bottle. I think if he can pull off another win, like I said, there's just so many of the big names are tied up right now. So I think you're going to have a hard time calling out someone really high in the rankings. So I think for Mendoza, ask for a lot of money and get a rematch. Give Fundora the rematch. Fundora's still a good name. Like I said, Showtime's done a really good job marketing him and hyping him around their cards. So I think that's kind of the next thing for him. And I think the other thing, just bringing it back to more of a casual standpoint, and like you said, the knockouts getting you fans, I think on a night where you had a lot of bigger names to compete with, you probably scored the biggest highlight of all of them. So I think you can walk away happy with that, even if you weren't maybe marketed like you should have been. But that was probably the like I said, the smallest of the 3 cards we saw this weekend. The next one I wanted to jump into was Shakur Stevenson on ESPN, the top ranked card, fighting Shuichiro Yoshino, who casual fans will best know for recently fighting and beating Nakatani in a really, really brutal fight. If you haven't seen any images for it or saw the fight, they're really bloodied up, man, at the end of that fight. And I think there was a pretty bad headbutt that actually ended the fight. But it was still really brutal and impressive considering Nakatani can go with the best of them. He went the distance with Teofimo Lopez. Actually, probably the worst Teofimo's looked in a fight besides, obviously, his losses and the Lomachenko fight. I would say Nakatani even had more success than maybe Sandor Martin did against Teofimo Lopez, considering he's a smaller fighter. Anyway, so that was Yoshino's best name going into this fight. And I kind of expected, as most people, the standard Shakur Stevenson fare of going the distance. He had a very impressive debut by getting the TKO in the fight. What did you think of Shakur's performance here?
I thought it was good. It's good for Shakur to get up there, do something impressive. His fans are going to follow him. He's already got the name. One thing that was interesting is Yoshino. That's how you pronounce it. I don't know if you saw this. He said after the fight, the power wasn't really there. I didn't feel his power was an early stoppage. Now, I don't know if that's a sore loss or if it's true. But if it's true, it's interesting, right? You never want to look too deep into that because some guys got a glass chin, some guys got freaking an Iron Man suit on. But if the power's not there, then maybe that is something Shakur, should look at or maybe think about. But, I mean, regardless, not to take anything away from Shakur, great performance, great win, welcome to the weight class. Now let's see what you do. I'm called out Haney after.
Right.
So that's interesting. That's an interesting fight, especially for Haney, who seemed like after the Loma fight was probably going to move up. But now we'll see.
Yeah, and it's interesting you brought up the interview mentioning that he didn't feel the power. I mean, he was getting dominated that fight. He was getting messed up. He was taking a lot of unnecessary punishment. So maybe the power really wasn't there, but I don't think you should really be saying that when you look that beat up at the end of a
No,
fight.
absolutely not.
Shakur Stevenson, I think this cemented him as a threat at the 135 division. I think he's a danger to really anyone, and this kind of put him in line for a title shot, honestly. The fact that this guy beat Nakatani, who got a lot of praise from a lot of people for a long time, established Stevenson as a guy who deserves a title shot.
Well, also with Shakur, and I know this is obviously a weight class above it, but, you know, a lot of people are like, well, good for Ryan and Tank for making the fight. Don't forget, Shakur made the Valdez fight.
Right.
So that fight was huge, and he dominated that fight. So don't forget, Shakur and Valdez, of course, started leading the way in that sense of making the big fights. I mean, throw him in the title shot, I think.
Yeah, and despite Shakur, sometimes getting criticized as a boring fighter, I think he's honestly a danger to Devin Haney at this, especially at 135, where Devin looks a little drained. I think that Shakur Stevenson is so skilled that I would argue after this Ryan fight, let's say, I mean, this is all speculation, but I'm assuming Tank, even if he beats Ryan, I think he'll very much avoid Shakur Stevenson at 135. I think Shakur spells disaster for Tank. I think he's exactly the style that Tank is afraid of. I think Shakur would win 12 rounds again against Gervonta Tank Davis. And I think he's a danger to Haney at 135 because Haney would be drained. And I think even if they eventually were to fight at 140, Shakur would bring a challenge to Haney. Lomachenko is the fight that I think Shakur is going to be calling for because I think Haney will move up. Regardless of if Loma wins or loses to Haney, I think Shakur will be edging for that fight. And I think it's a great fight. I think Lomachenko is best at 130. I think he should move back down if he's intent on a long career, getting as much longevity as he can out of his career. I think if he wants legacy, though, he should stay at 135, fight Shakur. Regardless of whether you win or lose, I think that's an awesome fight to make and shows people that you're willing to still get in the ring with the best. What do you think of Shakur, though? What do you think his next fight should be in the lightweight division?
I think you kind of dotted that up. It's, I'd love to see Shakur Tank if Tank wins. Probably doesn't happen, like you said. Tank probably ducks that fight. Maybe not. The Ryan fight was made. If Ryan wins, Ryan goes up, right? I don't think we see a 135 Ryan anymore, so that's not really in the future. Maybe Haney, if Haney doesn't go up, it makes sense. That's the guy for Haney, I think, right. If Haney's staying at 135.
That's the reason to stay.
Yeah, exactly. But a fight we should have seen at 130, Shakur and Loma. I think, like you said, Loma get in there. But Loma also, be careful how much, I think he loses that fight. Careful how much you start to lose now to these good fighters. Because I think he loses to Haney. And I think he loses to Shakur.
Yeah, and, we'll kind of know more after this Haney fight for sure. I think in the meantime, Shakur maybe gets another maybe tune-up at 135. And why not? Well, I call it a tune-up. It's a really big, good challenge. Why not fight Kambosos next? Yeah. I think that gives Kambosos plenty of time to rest. I think he was willing to do it before. Just need a little bit more time. So I'd love to see Kambosos and Stevenson throw down while Loma and Haney handle the business over the belts.
Yeah, that would be fun. But again, Loma and Haney is soon too. So.
Right, and this was definitely the technical masterclass of the weekend. If you were looking for possibly the best fighter of the weekend, I think it was here in Shakur Stevenson. But that's not to discredit the last fight we're going to talk about, which was Jesse Bam Rodriguez, who returned to his natural weight class to fight Christian Gonzalez for the vacant WBO flyweight title. In a fight that went the distance, many expected Bam to throw on a lot more pressure and knock out Gonzalez, maybe get a stoppage. But we found out halfway through the fight, Bam would suffer a broken jaw, which actually required surgery after the fight. But somehow still fought through to go the distance. And in my scorecards, won basically every round. I mean, you could give Gonzalez 2 or 3 rounds here and there. They were still kind of close, even those rounds. But it was all the Rodriguez-Bam show in my eyes. What did you think of the fight?
Yeah, very biased here. I love Bam Bam. I do. Again, like you said, the pressure maybe wasn't there, but a broken jaw, I'm sure it's a little bit. If I broke my jaw, I'd be crying in the corner and trying to get to the hospital immediately. So shout out to Bam Bam if somehow you're listening to this. Great fighter. I love every time he steps in the ring. I get so excited. But now, I want Bam Bam Estrada. I want that fight so bad now, and I think it makes sense for Bam Bam. I think it does numbers. California, San Antonio, do it, book it, let's get it done.
Yeah, and just to go off of that, I mentioned that Mendoza probably scored the highlight of the weekend. Shakur probably the technical ability, just the boxing IQ and all that, showing just greatness in boxing. But I think Bam showed something that is underrated in a lot of people's eyes, but I think a lot of Mexicans show it, is the heart in boxing. Bam Rodriguez, I don't know how he made it through that fight. He is crazy tough, and like I said, he's all about heart. I would love to see a Chocolatito Bam fight. I would love to see an Estrada Bam fight, but I think we're not getting that anytime soon. I think we're more likely to get Chocolatito Estrada 4. I think that Eddie Hearn is going to use his influence a little to try and get Bam to come back for a Sonny Edwards fight. He signed Sonny Edwards. He seems to really like getting Mexicans and UK fighters in the ring together, whether that be in Mexico or the UK. So I think he's really going to push for that. And that's a great fight, honestly. For that division, that's probably the best fight you can make. Nothing to be mad about there. I think it just continues to cement Bam's legacy. Such a young fighter already, almost a Hall of Fame career, I would argue. But I would, like you said, really love to see Bam get in the ring with Estrada and even Chocolatito before they hang up their boots.
Yeah, a Sonny Edwards fight, though, is another fight you just, like you said, can't complain about. A fun fight. But, being selfish. If he fights one of those two guys in Chocolatito or Estrada, it's a war. And so, selfishly, you're like, I want to see that. But Sonny Edwards is also a war. I think Bam, okay, maybe, like I said, bias, wins all three of those fights.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if there's anyone that's going to stop Bam, especially Estrada was my guy that maybe could have done it. But he's just getting older. Every year is adding I think just more experience to Bam, just making him a better fighter.
When we saw too from Estrada, the output is a little bit less
right
now.
Absolutely, yeah. All right, so that does it for our recap for last week's boxing. This weekend, not a very busy week. Headlined by Joyce returning to the ring. We talked about him a little earlier when we talked about Joshua. And I'm almost 100% positive he's going to beat Zhilei Zhang, who actually had a great showing in his last performance. Isn't a deadbeat, but honestly, Joyce is just such a great fighter. I think this is really his last hoorah to set himself up as one of the top guys. And I think he's chasing a giant British showdown, honestly. So I think they're setting him up for that. What do you think of this fight? I know you're not super familiar with these guys, but from what you know, going into it.
Yeah, kind of like you said, I see Joyce winning, especially after this, I'm going to butcher the name, Zhang, was seen training with Alex Pereira, who obviously got absolutely demolished in a boxing exchange with Israel Adesanya last weekend. No, but, obviously that's a joke. I think Joyce wins, setting something up. Like we said, the heavyweight's a little bit, I guess, weird right now, but setting something big up for him. And, heavyweight, go make your money, man. Go out and go make your money and win this fight. Even sit back a little bit if you have to and get yourself the big fight. Get yourself some money and go put on a performance. I think he will this weekend. A fight that, if you got, tune in. Because it could, those heavyweights in the ring, always fun. It's never a letdown when you get two heavyweights in the ring, especially big dudes.
Yeah, and I think this will be the beginning of us seeing someone like Jared Anderson, who's obviously making a lot of noise here as a huge heavyweight prospect in the U.S. I think this is going to be the beginning of us seeing maybe someone like that start chasing Joyce. I don't think Joyce looks unbeatable in my opinion, and I think a guy like Jared Anderson with the right corner behind him, and the right momentum could spell disaster for Joyce. I think Joyce wants to chase a British showdown, like I said before. So maybe finding a decent European challenge or someone on the level of like a Dillian White in the UK, maybe next for him. I think he's praying that Fury or Joshua give him a call, but it's really going to depend on kind of his performance this weekend. But like I said, I hope to see Jared Anderson chasing this guy real soon.
Yeah, yeah, I like Jared Anderson. He's a highlight reel already.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's a highlight reel already.
He's going to be a lot of fun to see with these guys. All right, and going on that card, I don't know if you know this, but the co-main sees Michaela Mayer facing Christina Lindarto. Sorry, I probably butchered that name a little bit. I don't know much about the Michaela Mayer's opponent, but they are fighting for the WBC lightweight title. The big news here is I think Michaela Mayer is going to win and handle business. But man, women's boxing is in a great spot. This sets up a potential super huge mega fight between Michaela Mayer and Katie Taylor if Mayer's manages to be victorious. Obviously, you have Bumgarner who could move up also as well and fight any of these guys. That also opens the door for anyone who'd be willing to come down to 135 and fight Katie Taylor or Michaela Mayer. I mean, it's just open. These girls want to fight each other. They're really showing the guys how it's done in boxing, how combat sports should be run, what chasing legacy and greatness, what a Hall of Fame career really means. I can't give enough props to the women for making these fights. What do you think of this fight? First of all, Michaela Mayer and Christina, and the potential fights this sets up.
Yeah, it's a fun fight for Michaela Mayer. You know, I was pretty, sad that she didn't get the decision over Baumgartner, but I also think she lost. I think she was a little bit of a sore loser and, kind of showed up and didn't really want to fight at some points, it seemed like, especially at some crucial spots. But, yeah, like you said, it could set up that rematch. I think that's fun. I would love to see that rematch. Baumgartner has kind of avoided it, right? She's kind of, I took your belt, so I'm done. So hopefully that doesn't keep going. But even if that does, they made the fight, so you can't criticize them for that. Katie Taylor, I mean, come on, we all know what we want to see, right? Back over there, with her people, with McGregor in the crowd, Amanda Serrano. I mean, that's the fight for me. That's honestly top 3 or 4 fights for me in boxing in general, even probably in combat sports.
Yeah, and going off of that, Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano is the fight to make. But the women, man, just seem willing to do crazy things with the weight classes, honestly. I mean, we've seen what Clarissa Shields has been able to do in multiple weight classes. Katie Taylor herself, Amanda Serrano. They're all willing to go through these different weight classes, and it's just really exciting to see them so close with so much talent. You have Michaela Mayer, Katie Taylor, Alicia Bumgardner could be thrown in the mix. Maybe not even to fight Michaela Mayer, but if she were to come up and fight Katie Taylor after a Michaela Mayer and Serrano fight or something, there's just so many combinations you can do, and all of them seem willing to say, hey, as long as the other person signs on the dot, we're going to make this fight happen, And it's really exciting to see. So I think we're in a really fun spot, and I think this is just the start of another series of great fight between all these women.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you call yourself a casual fan, right, go watch the women fight. Because, man, not only do they fight each other, but they love to get into some wars.
Yeah, absolutely. The last news we heard out of this weekend was confirmation that Teofimo Lopez would be fighting Josh Taylor on June 10th in New York. They had a little bit of a back and forth exchange on the ESPN card. It was kind of fun. Always actually pretty cool to see Teofimo back. He's actually really charismatic, and I think he's a great personality for boxing. Kind of can't stand his dad. What are your early thoughts on this fight, Chats?
I think 2 guys who needed the fight, honestly. One of these guys is going to get a huge confidence push. I got Teo. Early prediction, I got Teo. I think the 2 have looked, how do I put this, kind of unimpressive, I guess, for lack of a better term, recently, where I think, Teo won his last fight. I think that was fair. I think Taylor lost against Catterall. That was his last fight, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. So 2 guys who haven't been very impressive, but 2 guys who have an opportunity now to be very impressive. Even if, one of them loses, still has an opportunity to be very impressive, which is fun. Early pick, I'm taking Teo. I'm taking him by decision. But I think that Josh Taylor could get hit real hard and really go down for Teo. I'm also interested to see Teo get hit really hard by Josh Taylor. It'll be fun.
Did you hear Josh Taylor call him sweetheart in the press conference? That was pretty funny, man. I'm telling you, these two guys are going to make for some fun trash talking leading up to this. My early prediction is also Teofimo Lopez. Here's my little rant section like I gave for Loma last time. Teofimo Lopez is the man who broke the Matrix. He caused the glitch in the Matrix. Okay, Teofimo Lopez is the man who beat Lomachenko, albeit an injured Lomachenko. He beat Lomachenko and made Lomachenko look like a deer in headlights. And I think if that Teofimo Lopez shows up, is able to bring that confidence into this Josh Taylor fight, a Josh Taylor who didn't look great against Catterall, I think that just that flash of greatness is enough to pull the win over Josh Taylor. Honestly, I think Ramirez looked pretty impressive against Josh Taylor, and Jose Ramirez is ducking Prograis. So Teofimo Lopez, I think, is going to take the win on this one. I think he's going to come out with that spirit that he had against Loma and Comey and those guys and really make a statement. Whether or not that Teofimo Lopez lasts is my big question. I think we can see these flashes, but I'd really like to see if he can pull it off on consecutive big fights. But those are my thoughts. Any final thoughts on the presser or anything like that? Do you think this fight is going to be a banger of a fight, or do you see them being very cautious?
I think both. I think you'll see it to be cautious at times, but the exchanges will be fun, and the exchanges will kind of have you, tensing up a little bit because one of those guys can land and drop the other one. We both know that both these guys can be dropped. And yeah, that's really it for me. I mean, no better stage to do it than the MSG. Gotta love it, so it'll be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it's always fun to see Teofimo back. He doesn't get enough credit, I think. He was the first of those young guys to step up to a big challenger in Lomachenko. So nothing but respect for the guy. And awesome that they're making this fight. If it wasn't going to be the Catterall rematch or a big fight for Teo, I'm glad that it's going to be Taylor and Lopez. I think that's a great matchup. That's going to do it for our podcast. If you guys want to know our picks on Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Tank Davis, please watch the last episode of the podcast. We gave our picks on how the fight's going to go. We will be back at the end of this month with the results from that pay-per-view. What are your final messages to casual fans thinking about watching Davis and Ryan?
Don't think twice. Just do it. I mean, and before you even think about it, I'll tell you right now, go to YouTube, okay? Watch the All Access. Two guys who are letting each other hear it, but, also at the same time, it's so awesome to see when they did an interview, I don't know who it was the other day, with Tank Davis, and he said to Tank Davis, I heard you don't like to bring family to fights that you feel are going to be a war. And, you expect Tank in this situation to kind of, as he's been doing, Ryan's weak, Ryan's this or whatever. And he said, yeah, the family's not coming to this one. He said, even my mom is I'm going to have her stay away. He said, I respect the power, I respect this, and same from Ryan's side. It's all respect on the level of boxing and the power that these two have, but I don't see this one being cautious. Haney Loma, if you're not sure about watching that one, sure, maybe stay away from it. Don't stay away from this one.
Awesome. Well, you heard the hype from Chats here. It's going to be a big one. You might get bored from the undercard. Might not be anything special, but the main event's going to be huge. Might even be the biggest fight of the not only this year of boxing, but could potentially be the biggest fight of the next 5 years. You never know how the Ryan fans are going to turn out. But thanks, everyone, for watching. Any last words, Chats?
Nothing from me. Thank you guys for watching.
Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, guys. Thanks again. We'll talk to you guys soon.